The evening Claire Whitman's nephew arrived felt normal on the surface, but something beneath it carried quiet tension, like the pause before a deep breath, and Claire sensed it even before the bus stopped at the end of the street, because her life had been made of small pauses lately, careful ones, the kind you learn after disappointment. She stood on the porch of her modest Vermont home, holding a mug she had already forgotten to drink from, watching the road curve through trees touched with early autumn, their colors soft and unsure, much like her own heart. Claire was 38, living alone after a divorce that ended without shouting or drama, just silence and distance, and silence had stayed with her ever since. When the bus finally hissed to a stop, she saw Ethan step down, taller than she expected, slimmer, carrying himself with a calm that felt older than his 19 years. He looked around once, taking everything in, then spotted her and smiled, not wide or careless, but warm and controlled, and that smile made Claire feel both comforted and unsettled. They hugged briefly, politely, as if both were unsure how much closeness was allowed after so many years apart, and as she drove him home, conversation moved quickly from college to travel plans to the weather, smooth and easy, yet missing something honest. Inside the house, Ethan took in the details quietly, the faded photos, the careful order, the absence of anything messy or loud, and Claire noticed his eyes linger on things people usually ignored, like the empty second chair by the fireplace or the way she paused before answering simple questions. The first night passed with shared dinner and light laughter, but Claire felt aware of herself in a new way, as if being seen by someone younger but thoughtful had shifted the balance of the room. Over the next days, life moved fast but gentle. Ethan helped without being asked, woke early, and spoke with care, and Claire found herself opening small pieces of her routine to him without realizing it, cooking meals she hadn't made in years, walking paths she usually avoided. She told herself it was just family comfort, but something else stirred beneath that explanation, not romance, not desire, but recognition, the rare feeling of being noticed without judgment. Ethan, meanwhile, carried his own quiet purpose, shaped by something he had overheard before leaving home, a half-spoken truth about Claire that had stayed with him, pushing him to see her not as an aunt from childhood memories, but as a person who had endured more than she showed. As they talked late into the night about dreams and fears and the strange pressure of becoming an adult, Claire felt time speed up, conversations flowing without effort, each moment layered with meaning yet free of weight. Still, questions hovered unasked, especially when Ethan watched her carefully during silences, and when Claire caught herself wondering what he was really thinking. The visit felt ordinary to anyone else, but for Claire, each day carried a quiet urgency, as if something important was approaching without a clear shape, and when she lay awake at night listening to the wind outside, she sensed that this simple family visit was already changing her, even before the truth behind it revealed itself. As the days passed, Claire noticed a shift in the rhythm of her home, a quiet energy that made the walls feel less empty and the evenings lighter, and it surprised her how naturally Ethan fit into her life, moving around her small house with ease, helping with chores she had put off, arranging books and cleaning windows, but never intruding, always observing, always careful with his words, as if he understood the fragile balance of her days. They walked together in the nearby woods, leaves crunching underfoot, talking about everything from music to college classes, and sometimes saying nothing at all, letting silence fill the spaces between them, a comfortable kind of quiet that made Claire aware of how rarely she had shared this with anyone in years. 1. Afternoon, while Ethan helped repair a loose step on the porch, Claire ran into Daniel Harris, an old friend from high school, at the town bookstore, and their conversation flowed easily, warm and familiar, reminding her of lighter times, laughter that didn't feel forced, and a connection that hadn't been fully lost despite the years. Returning home, she noticed Ethan's subtle shift, how he lingered by the doorway, watching her expression, waiting to speak but holding back, and when she mentioned Daniel later, his voice was soft, almost hesitant. "You seem happy," he said, and Claire felt a flutter of awareness she hadn't expected, the way someone close enough to notice small changes could make her self-conscious yet comforted at the same time. Nights were spent with tea and books, the rain occasionally tapping against the windows, and Ethan often spoke of college, future plans, and the people he admired, but beneath each story, he carried questions unspoken, emotions carefully masked, a curiosity about her life that went beyond casual interest, a need to understand the woman who had quietly endured more than anyone acknowledged. Claire began to sense that his presence was teaching her something too, reminding her that life could still carry gentle surprises, small joys, and unexpected moments of connection, that it wasn't too late to feel seen, appreciated, and even noticed in ways that went beyond friendship. Ethan, for his part, wrestled with his own thoughts, recalling half-remembered conversations at his mother's house about Claire's sacrifices and resilience, the way she had handled challenges silently, and he realized that his visit was not merely a casual family stay, but a chance to witness, understand, and perhaps learn from someone he had always admired from afar but never truly known. Each day, Claire noticed herself opening up more, sharing small stories of her past, letting laughter come easily, even daring to express frustrations she normally held inside, while Ethan listened with a patience and attentiveness that made her feel both protected and encouraged, like someone who understood without needing explanations. The town around them moved on in its own slow pace, neighbors nodding in passing, autumn deepening, but inside Claire's house, a quiet transformation was underway, one that neither of them fully recognized yet, the way ordinary days can sometimes hold extraordinary shifts if you only pause to notice them. The tension of unspoken truths and delicate emotions built subtly beneath the surface, a layer of connection neither wanted to name, a blend of respect, admiration, and something tender that was neither rushed nor defined, leaving both of them wondering, silently, about the boundaries of their closeness, and whether this visit might leave marks on their hearts that would linger long after Ethan returned to Toronto. By the end of the week, Claire felt the house was warmer, lighter, full of moments that had nothing to do with routine or obligation, moments that felt intimate simply because they were shared honestly, and Ethan carried with him a quiet awareness of how much courage it could take to live a life of authenticity, observing Claire as she moved through her world with strength and subtle grace, learning lessons about patience, honesty, and emotional truth without a single word being forcefully said. And so, as the rain fell softly outside and the evening shadows stretched long across the floor, both felt the subtle pull of something unspoken, the kind of understanding that doesn't demand answers, only presence, leaving them on the brink of a realization neither yet fully grasped, the kind of quiet revelation that would later turn ordinary days into memories of lasting significance. The seventh day arrived with steady rain, soft but persistent, drumming against the windows and filling the house with a gentle rhythm that made the air feel heavier with unspoken thoughts, and Claire and Ethan found themselves sitting at the kitchen table, each holding a warm cup of tea, neither speaking at first, letting the sound of raindrops fill the silence that had stretched between them over the past week. Finally, Ethan broke the quiet, his voice low but steady. "Aunt Claire, can I ask you something?" Claire, sensing the weight in his tone, nodded, and he asked about her divorce, a question that touched a tender nerve, bringing years of quiet heartbreak and careful restraint to the surface. Claire spoke softly, choosing her words with care, explaining that sometimes love isn't enough when honesty is missing, when paths diverge quietly but inevitably, and she shared how she had tried to protect her family and herself from bitterness, never realizing how much of her own story she had silenced. Ethan listened closely, absorbing every word, and then revealed what he had overheard from his mother years ago, a fragment of truth about Claire's sacrifices, the way she had taken responsibility for things that weren't hers to carry, the quiet courage she had shown while keeping her pain hidden. His admission filled the room with a new energy, a mix of relief and tension, as Claire realized he hadn't come just to visit or reconnect his family, but to understand her in a way that few people ever had. He spoke of his own need to learn about strength, honesty, and bravery, and how observing her life had given him lessons he couldn't have learned anywhere else, and Claire felt a surge of emotions, pride, surprise, and an unexpected warmth, as she realized the depth of his awareness and empathy. They talked late into the night, the rain continuing its steady rhythm outside, about life, choices, and the unspoken compromises people make to survive and protect the people they love, and with each sentence, the walls between them seemed to dissolve, leaving a rare, unguarded intimacy that was neither romantic nor casual, but profoundly human and emotional. Ethan's questions were careful, never intrusive, but they drew Claire out of her usual reserve, and she found herself sharing memories she hadn't spoken aloud in years, moments of vulnerability, heartbreak, and small victories, while he responded with gentle encouragement, admiration, and a kind of understanding that made her feel truly seen for the first time in a long time. The rain, the quiet house, and the shared confessions created a space where time seemed suspended, where both realized that their connection was deepening in ways neither expected, and Claire felt an emotional shift inside her, a recognition that the presence of someone who truly understands you can change everything, even in a single conversation. Ethan, meanwhile, wrestled with his own realizations, seeing Claire not just as an aunt, but as a person who had carried the weight of life gracefully, whose strength was quiet but undeniable, and who taught lessons through actions and choices rather than words, a model of resilience that inspired him to examine his own life and courage. By the end of the evening, the storm outside mirrored the emotional storm within the kitchen, a mix of release, revelation, and connection, and Claire felt an unfamiliar lightness, as if acknowledging past pain and sacrifices had lifted a burden she hadn't realized she carried alone. They stayed together for hours, talking, listening, and sometimes simply sitting in silence, the kind of silence that communicates more than words, where shared presence becomes a language itself, and both understood that the visit had shifted from ordinary family time into something transformative, a quiet awakening of empathy, understanding, and the courage to face truths long buried. When the conversation finally slowed, Claire realized that this moment, fragile and intense, had opened a door in both their hearts, a door that could not be closed, and Ethan understood that his role in her life, brief as it might be, carried a purpose beyond companionship. It was about recognition, affirmation, and the delicate, powerful influence of shared honesty. As the night deepened and rain softened to a whisper, the air felt different, lighter yet charged with emotion, a reminder that sometimes revelations come quietly, in gentle words and steady presence, and that understanding another person's journey can bring clarity, closure, and unexpected lessons that linger long after the conversation ends, shaping both hearts in subtle but lasting ways. The final day of Ethan's visit arrived with a soft morning light that felt almost too gentle, casting long shadows across the small Vermont town, and Claire felt an unfamiliar mix of anticipation and quiet sadness knowing that the ordinary rhythm they had shared would soon end, yet she also sensed a sense of completion, a gentle resolution that had begun to form in the days of laughter, quiet conversations, and shared revelations. They walked together down the narrow road toward the outskirts of town, where the air was crisp with the first hints of winter and the leaves, now deep orange and brown, rustled under their feet, and Claire noticed how Ethan moved with a calm confidence, different from the shy boy she remembered, carrying himself as if he had absorbed lessons from the world and from her, lessons in patience, honesty, and quiet courage. "I'm glad I came," Ethan said, his voice soft but sincere, and Claire smiled, wondering if he realized the depth of the words he had spoken, how much they meant to her, because she too felt gratitude, not only for his visit, but for the unexpected ways it had reminded her of life's possibilities, of hope, and of the subtle ways people can heal each other without even trying. She asked him what he had learned, expecting a simple answer, but Ethan paused, looking toward the horizon, then said, "You taught me that strength doesn't have to be loud, and love doesn't mean losing yourself," and the words hit Claire with an unexpected warmth, a realization that her quiet life and the choices she had made had left an impact, not just on her own future, but on someone she cared deeply for. Later that day, Claire received a message from Daniel, the old friend she had met at the bookstore, a simple invitation for coffee, and she felt a flutter of excitement, a soft, nervous hope, because for the first time in years she allowed herself to consider that life could hold new beginnings, and perhaps love could return in a gentle, respectful way that honored her experiences and resilience. As Ethan packed his bag, Claire watched him, noticing the maturity in his movements, the subtle confidence in the way he handled the simplest tasks, and she realized that his presence had transformed the house, the days, and even her heart, leaving a sense of openness where uncertainty had lived before. They hugged goodbye, longer this time, not awkward or polite, but warm and filled with the unspoken understanding of shared growth, and Claire felt a pang of loss mingled with pride, knowing that he would carry the lessons of their time together forward into his own life, just as she would carry the quiet joy of being recognized, understood, and valued in ways she hadn't expected. Walking back into her home after seeing him off, Claire felt a subtle shift in the air, a sense of lightness and possibility, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the laughter, the honest conversations, and the gentle revelations that had passed between them, and she realized that healing and hope were not sudden, dramatic moments, but often quiet, cumulative, and deeply personal experiences that revealed themselves over time. That evening, she poured herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the sky turn soft shades of pink and gray, reflecting on the journey of the past 2 weeks, and she understood that Ethan's visit had started as a simple family obligation, yet ended as a profound revelation, a gentle awakening to the enduring value of honesty, presence, and human connection, leaving both of them changed in ways that would resonate far beyond the brief span of a visit. Claire smiled at the memory of their conversations, the subtle gestures of care and understanding, and even the silences that had carried as much meaning as words, knowing that sometimes, the people who enter our lives briefly can leave the deepest impressions, reminding us of who we are, what we have endured, and what we are still capable of feeling, hoping, and embracing in the quiet, unfolding chapters of our own lives. And as night fell, the house was peaceful, yet charged with an invisible warmth, the kind that comes from shared revelations, unspoken lessons, and the comforting awareness that even ordinary days can end with extraordinary insight, leaving hearts open, souls lighter, and minds ready to welcome the possibilities that tomorrow might bring, proving that life's most meaningful changes often arrive gently, carried by the simplest human connections.